Sometimes the most ordinary day can turn into a fight for survival. In the quiet town of Grove County, Texas, two officers responded to what seemed like a routine call, an escaped snake at a wildlife sanctuary. But nothing could prepare them for what they would face, a 22-foot giant python in a life-or-death battle with a mother lion protecting her cubs. This is a story of courage, quick thinking, and the extraordinary lengths people will go to save lives, both human and animal. If you love stories of real-life heroism and incredible wildlife rescues, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave a comment telling us what you would have done in their shoes. Let's dive into this unforgettable adventure. The morning air in Grove County, Texas was deceptively calm as Officer Mike Brennan cruised along the quiet streets, the soft hum of the police radio breaking the stillness. A flash of static interrupted his thoughts, followed by dispatch's urgent voice. All available units, we have an emergency at Shepherd Wildlife Rescue. A large python has escaped containment and is threatening other animals. Animal control is currently tied up with multiple incidents. Any officers nearby, please respond immediately. Mike exchanged a swift glance with his partner, Officer Jason Coleman, who sat tensely behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel. Neither spoke. Over 2 decades combined on the force had taught them that emergencies often came in the most unexpected forms, but even they had never faced a report quite like this. A giant python loose in a sanctuary filled with exotic predators. Dispatch, this is Unit 217 responding. ETA 4 minutes, Mike radioed, flipping on the cruiser's lights. Jason tapped the siren lightly and the car surged forward, tires humming against the asphalt. Their eyes met for a brief instant, a silent acknowledgement that today, normal procedures might not apply. Shepherd Wildlife Rescue was not your average wildlife center. Opened 3 years prior by Dr. Karen Shepherd, a former zoo veterinarian, it had quickly gained fame for rescuing animals from illegal trafficking and abusive ownership. Visitors marveled at its naturalistic enclosures, designed to mimic the savannas of Africa and rainforests of Asia. Yet today the sanctuary's serene environment was replaced by the hum of fear and chaos. A staff member waved frantically as the cruiser pulled through the sanctuary gates. "Thank God you're here," she called. "It's out of control." Dr. Shepherd emerged from the crowd of panicked employees, her khaki pants slightly wrinkled, in a staff polo shirt marked with the sanctuary's emblem. Her face was tight with concern, but her voice carried authority as she explained the crisis. De Brutus, our reticulated python, somehow escaped his enclosure during feeding. He's 22 feet long and weighs around 250 pounds. He's made his way into the Lioness enclosure. Jason's eyebrows shot up. Wait, a snake is attacking a lion? Bar Shepherd nodded grimly. Nala, the lioness, is defending her 8-week-old cubs, but Brutus is predatory and extremely strong. One coil around her and it could be fatal. The cubs would be defenseless. Mike's mind raced, calculating risk. Why not just tranquilize the snake? The dart bounced right off, Dr. Shepherd replied. We had the angle wrong. We can't get close safely with both predators in distress. Our animal management team is assembling proper equipment, but they're still 15 minutes out. By then, her voice faltered slightly. They rounded the corner to the lion habitat, and the officers froze. The enclosure, designed with acacia trees, rock formations, and tall grass, was meant to evoke the African savanna. Today it was the scene of a life-or-death struggle. A massive serpent had wrapped itself partially around a toy lioness, her claws raking against the python's muscular body. The animals moved with terrifying grace, each strike a calculated attempt to overpower the other. 2 tiny cubs cowered beneath a rock outcropping, trembling as they watched their mother's desperate struggle. Jason muttered almost under his breath, "Jesus Christ." Dr. Shepherd shook her head. Shooting is the last resort. One bullet could hit the wrong target. If both adult animals are incapacitated, the cubs won't survive. Mike's tactical mind took over. He surveyed the enclosure, identifying the service gate on the east side. That corridor leads directly into the habitat, but it's dangerous. No barriers once we enter. If the snake or the lioness redirects aggression, we retreat immediately. Jason looked doubtful. We're not trained for this. Those cubs could watch their mother die if we don't act. Mike's tone was calm, almost reassuring. We've handled aggressive dogs. That bull last summer, same principle. Distance, barriers, minimize risk. We can buy time until the professionals arrive. They jogged to the equipment shed, where sanctuary staff helped them gather whatever might help. Thick leather gloves, catch poles designed for canine control, a snake hook, and a large CO2 fire extinguisher. Cold can disorient snakes temporarily, the staff member explained. It might give you a moment to separate them. Armed with improvised tools, Mike and Jason approached the service entrance. Dr. Shepard met them, face grave. Response team will be here in 8 minutes. Nala is tiring. Brutus has 1 coil around her hindquarters. If he gets a second, constriction will be lethal. Mike nodded. We understand the risks. We can't just stand by. The service gate opened, revealing the dimly lit keeper corridor. The sounds of the struggle grew louder as they neared the habitat. Mike positioned himself near the python's head, while Jason took the opposite side. The air was heavy with the scent of predators. Hot, musky, and unnerving in its intensity. Mike circled slowly, calculating his approach. 15 feet from the battling animals, the python's head swiveled, black tongue flicking rapidly. Its eyes, unblinking and cold, fixed on Mike, momentarily distracted from the lioness. Now, Bria! Mike shouted, releasing the CO2 from the fire extinguisher directly at the snake's face. The cold cloud enveloped Brutus, who recoiled in confusion. In that critical moment, the lioness twisted violently, freeing herself from the python's grip. Jason lunged with the catch pole, creating a gap between the 2 apex predators. The scene seemed frozen in time. Brutus, disoriented, lashed blindly. His massive head struck Jason's leg, teeth sinking into the officer's thigh. Jason cried out as he stumbled backward, the python's momentum nearly bringing him down. Mike's instincts screamed, abandon the extinguisher, draw the weapon. But he paused, understanding the danger to the cubs if he fired. Dr. Shepard yelled, use the hook, control the head. Mike grabbed the aluminum snake hook, heart pounding. The python's wedge-shaped head followed every movement, tense and ready to strike. Jason struggled to free himself as the coil tightened with each movement. Almost got it, Jason gasped, finally pulling clear, collapsing several feet away. The python's head remained dangerous, but Mike held it firm with the hook. Dr. Shepard approached with a canvas bag, coordinating silently. On my count, distract, pin, secure. 3, 2, 1. The plan executed flawlessly. Dr. Shepard flung the bag toward Brutus's tail, drawing his attention. Mike lunged, pinning the head with the hook. Dr. Shepard slipped the python into the sack, twisting it shut. Jason dragged himself to safety, the lioness retreating toward her cubs. For the first time, the immediate danger had shifted. Their intervention had bought the precious minutes necessary for professional handlers to arrive. As they regrouped, adrenaline still surging, Mike and Jason understood the gravity of what had just occurred. The sanctuary's serene landscape had transformed into a battlefield of survival instincts, courage, and split-second decisions. The life of a mother, her cubs, and even their own hung in the balance, hinging on actions they had no formal training to perform. But instinct and dedication demanded. Outside the immediate danger, the officers took a moment to breathe. The cubs, tiny and frightened, were still alive. The lioness, exhausted but vigilant, watched over them. Brutus, though secured, still radiated deadly power. Mike and Jason shared a look. No words were needed. They had faced one of the most unusual calls of their careers, and the cost of hesitation could have been catastrophic. The sun had climbed higher, turning the sanctuary's grounds into a furnace of heat and tension. Mike's muscles burned from holding the snake's head steady with the aluminum hook, every twitch of Brutus's enormous body threatening to snap his focus. Jason lay several feet away, grimacing, blood soaking through his uniform where the python's teeth had punctured his thigh. The air smelled of iron, sweat, and the primal musk of apex predators, and every second felt like a lifetime. Dr. Shepard crouched beside the struggling officers, keeping her eyes on Nala. The lioness paced protectively near her cubs, amber eyes narrowing at any movement beyond the immediate threat. Stay calm, she instructed. If she senses fear, she'll escalate. Move deliberately, but do not panic. Mike's gaze flicked between the python, Jason, and the cubs, each of whom huddled behind rocks, trembling. Brutus writhed violently, attempting to reposition his coils, black tongue flicking in anticipation. One miscalculated movement, and the python could redirect its deadly constriction toward Jason again. Or worse, toward the cubs. Mike's heart pounded as he adjusted his leverage on the hook. Jason, teeth gritted against the pain, tried to pull his leg free from Brutus's weakening grip. The snake's muscles rippled under Mike's control, but it was far from neutralized. "Mike," Jason's voice was strained. "I don't know how much longer I can hold him off." "You will," Mike snapped, though his voice betrayed the tension gripping him. "Just a little longer. Focus on breathing. We've got this." Dr. Shepard moved closer to the canvas sack containing the python's head. "I'll help him," she said. "We need to stabilize the body while he's restrained. One misstep, and the situation goes from bad to fatal." Brutus's body thrashed, each twist sending waves through Mike's arms. The snake's eyes, unblinking and cold, followed every movement. Mike pressed harder, leveraging his weight to counteract the serpent's strength. He could feel the vibrations of its muscles coiling, ready to strike again. Time was against them. Nal was pacing closer to the humans, growls rumbling deep from her chest as she assessed the threat to her cubs. Jason finally found leverage, but he dragged himself backwards several feet, groaning with pain. "Got it," he gasped, staggering to a half-sitting position. Blood seeped from the puncture wounds, and his leg was stiff, almost immovable. Mike didn't wait for thanks. Every second counted. He had to prevent Brutus from refocusing on Jason or the cubs. "Now," Dr. Shepard instructed, "while I distract him, you pin the head fully." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the urgency. She moved to the snake's tail, brandishing her hands and stepping closer in a calculated motion. Brutus reacted instantly, shifting his attention toward her. Mike lunged forward with the hook, pressing the snake's head firmly against the ground, his palms slick with sweat. The python hissed, coils tightening reflexively, but the distraction worked. With precision, Dr. Shepard maneuvered the canvas sack over Brutus's head. The snake writhed and flexed violently, but the bag was secured with a twist, trapping the python without causing lethal harm. Mike released some tension from the hook, but remained close, monitoring every movement. Brutus's body still thrashed, his immense weight shifting unpredictably, and every ripple sent tremors through the nearby ground. Jason hobbled closer to Mike, still wincing from the bite. "I think I can move now," he said, flexing his leg cautiously. Mike nodded. "Good. Keep low, away from the coils. We're not done yet." Nala the lioness had observed the ordeal quietly, her cubs pressed against her side. Her growls softened, but her stance remained defensive. She was still a formidable force, and any sudden movement could trigger her aggression. Mike knew they had only a small window to get everyone, including the cubs and Jason, out safely before professional handlers arrived. At that moment, the sound of rushing footsteps echoed from the service entrance. The sanctuary's response team had arrived, clad in protective gear and carrying a specialized equipment for reptile management. Relief surged through Mike's chest, but he didn't relax. They were far from safe. "Multi-pronged approach," the lead handler called, assessing the scene with quick, experienced eyes. "Two of us take the python, the others create a barrier for the lioness. We extract the snake first, then all back out together." The plan was simple in theory, impossible in execution. Nala's growls intensified as she paced toward the humans, protective instincts kicking in. A high-pitched mewing came from the rock outcropping. One cub had ventured out, wobbling uncertainly. The second followed. Nala's attention shifted and her growl softened to a low rumble. She gathered her cubs, guiding them back to the relative safety of the rocks. "That's our window," the lead handler said. With careful precision, two handlers approached the python while Mike and Dr. Shepard maintained their positions. One handler replaced Mike at the hook, and the other secured Brutus's massive midsection with a specialized grip. The remaining two unfurled a large transport tube designed for safely moving constrictors. Mike stumbled backward, muscles trembling from the prolonged effort, immediately moving to Jason's side. "Pressure on that wound," he instructed, pressing lightly on the bite site. Jason grimaced but nodded, leaning heavily on Mike as they prepared to retreat. The handlers maneuvered Brutus's body into the tube, section by section. Each coil resisted, muscles rippling under immense strength. Yet the team worked with methodical efficiency. The shepherd ensured Nala remained calm, watching over her cubs with the patience and precision only a veterinarian of her experience could command. Once outside the enclosure, paramedics were waiting to assess Jason's injuries. Deep puncture wounds marred his leg, requiring stitches and antibiotics to prevent infection. But despite the severity, the danger was over, for the moment. Mike exhaled, the adrenaline still pulsing through his veins, as he watched the mother lion and her cubs settle into a safer corner of their habitat. Dr. Shepard approached the officers, a mixture of relief and residual tension on her face. "The python is secure," she said. "Nala and her cubs are unharmed. We'll monitor them for stress and minor injuries, but they're safe." Mike shook his head, feeling the exhaustion finally hit. "Just doing our job, ma'am, though I admit snake wrestling wasn't exactly in the academy syllabus." Jason let out a low laugh, wincing as he shifted. "You mean it wasn't in anyone's job description?" The sanctuary staff moved efficiently to secure the area, checking enclosures and ensuring the remaining animals were safe. The cubs' tiny bodies trembled initially, but soon began exploring, curiosity overtaking fear under their mother's watchful eyes. Nala's protective instincts had not only preserved her own life, but reinforced the importance of immediate human intervention in preventing a potential tragedy. Mike surveyed the scene, absorbing the chaos they had just survived. The sanctuary was calm again, but the echoes of growls, hisses, and the adrenaline-fueled struggle would linger in memory for a lifetime. Every decision, every movement had mattered. A moment of hesitation could have cost lives, both human and animal. As the sun cast longer shadows across the sanctuary grounds, the officers understood the enormity of their actions. What began as a routine response call had escalated into a life-or-death confrontation between apex predators. Their courage, improvisation, and determination had saved a mother, her cubs, and even given Brutus a controlled containment, avoiding unnecessary death. For Mike and Jason, there was a quiet, almost reflective satisfaction. They had acted in a situation no training could fully prepare them for, yet instinct and responsibility had guided their hands. The lioness and her cubs, the python, the sanctuary, all had survived, thanks to split-second decisions and unwavering resolve. The first part of the rescue was complete, but questions remained. How had Brutus escaped? Was it an accident or something more sinister? Those questions would lead Mike and Jason into an investigation far beyond the immediate battle, a discovery that would unveil human greed intertwined with the unpredictable instincts of wildlife. But for now, the immediate threat was gone. The sanctuary, momentarily at peace, gave the officers a brief chance to catch their breath before the next chapter of the story began. 2 days had passed since the harrowing rescue at Shepherd Wildlife Rescue, but the adrenaline from the python incident still clung to Mike Brennan and Jason Coleman. Grove County had returned to its usual rhythms, quiet streets, routine patrols, and the occasional minor emergency, but the memory of Brutus's writhing coils and Nala's ferocious maternal defense remained vivid. Jason hobbled into the precinct, leg bandaged and stitched, a prescription bag dangling from his hand. He carried himself with cautious pride, a subtle reminder of the stakes they had faced. "You ready to hear what we found?" Mike asked, steering them toward a quiet office. Jason cracked a wry grin. "Ready to tell this story at Allie's. Bar tab's on you, though." Mike chuckled, though the grin was fleeting. "First, we have business to attend to." Inside the office, Mike spread out the photos taken by the sanctuary's security cameras that morning. Most were unremarkable: patrolling staff, routine maintenance, but several caught his eye. 2 individuals, their faces partially obscured by hats and sunglasses, loitered near the southeastern perimeter. That section housed the sanctuary's rarest reptiles: Komodo dragons, venomous snakes, and endangered tortoises. The timing of their presence coincided perfectly with Brutus's escape. Jason leaned in. "You're saying this was intentional?" Mike nodded, his detective instincts sharpening. It appears someone wanted to create a distraction. Brutus's escape wasn't an accident. Look at the panel, partial dismantling. Tool marks consistent with a specialized reptile handling device. Not your average vandal. Dr. Shepard had been forthcoming during their follow-up visit. We did recently turn down a substantial offer for Brutus and several other rare animals. A private collector overseas, very persistent, even after repeated refusals. He did not take no for an answer lightly. Victor Xiao, Mike muttered, noting the name in his report. He's been flagged by Fish and Wildlife for suspected illegal trafficking before. This isn't amateur work. This is planned, organized, and high stakes. Jason whistled softly. So the Python attack was part of a heist? Mike explained, exactly. They created a diversion to occupy staff and security. While everyone was focused on Brutus and Nala, the perpetrators aimed to access the rare reptile enclosures. The officers cross-referenced timestamps and security footage. The intruders had been precise, approaching only after Brutus's containment breach, retreating immediately when the patrol car arrived. The operation would have succeeded if Mike and Jason hadn't responded so quickly. Each frame confirmed what they had suspected. Their intervention had saved not only the lioness and her cubs, but also dozens of rare and endangered animals. Dr. Shepard met the officers at the sanctuary for the follow-up investigation. She led them through enhanced security measures implemented after the incident. New camera placements, reinforced locks, and additional barriers around sensitive enclosures. We've never invested so quickly in upgrades, she admitted. But this incident revealed vulnerabilities we cannot ignore. Mike surveyed the upgrades, noting the efficiency and thoroughness. This is good, but we still need to document the breach thoroughly. If Xiao is as dangerous as we think, we need airtight evidence for the authorities. Jason, leaning against the reinforced fencing, watched Nala and her cubs through the viewing glass. She seems calm again, almost like nothing happened. Dr. Shepard smiled faintly, relief softening her features. Animals have remarkable resilience. Nala instinctively protects her cubs, but she's smart enough to assess threats and respond accordingly. That calm is learned, but also instinctual. Mike's focus returned to the python's enclosure. And Brutus? We've moved him to a more secure area within the reptile house, Dr. Shepard replied. We're monitoring him closely. He's just an animal following instinct. The real threat was the human interference. The officers began cataloging tool marks and evidence. Small scratches, consistent with a specialized reptile handling device, were evident on the access panels. This was not the work of a random vandal. It was someone familiar with both the sanctuary's layout and the animals themselves. Mike and Jason coordinated with the FBI's Wildlife Trafficking Task Force, sharing footage and forensic evidence. The federal team had been tracking Victor Xiao for years. He was suspected of orchestrating exotic animal thefts across multiple states, often involving rare reptiles and big cats for illegal black market sales. The Shepard Wildlife Rescue incident had likely been a test run, measuring response times and security vulnerabilities. Jason shook his head. I can't believe people plan something like this. Animals' lives, the risk to staff, all for profit. Mike's tone was steady but edged with resolve. It's organized crime, greed and exploitation disguised as collection. If they had succeeded, the consequences for the animals and sanctuary would have been catastrophic. Dr. Shepard led them to the lioness enclosure, showing how the cubs had adapted since the incident. Nala lounged on a raised platform, her amber eyes tracking every movement while her cubs tumbled playfully nearby. They've recovered remarkably well, she said. The cubs are confident, exploring safely. Nala is attentive but relaxed now. Jason watched them, a small smile forming despite his injury. It's hard to believe they were terrified just days ago. That python could have killed her. Or worse, the cubs could have been in danger. Dr. Shepard nodded. And your intervention made that difference. You didn't hesitate. Most would have waited for professionals to arrive, and by then, it might have been too late. Mike and Jason documented everything meticulously, ensuring the evidence chain remained intact. Every photograph, timestamp, and report contributed to the growing case against Xiao. The FBI indicated arrests were imminent, contingent on compiling sufficient evidence for prosecution. Later, Mike and Jason walked the sanctuary's paths, reflecting quietly. Children and families strolled past, oblivious to the recent danger. Birds sang in the trees, exotic reptiles basked behind glass, and yet the tension of the previous days lingered. "It's surreal," Jason said, breaking the silence. "One moment you're saving a lioness from a python, and the next you're part of a federal wildlife investigation." Mike nodded. "It shows how unpredictable this job can be. We trained for law enforcement, but sometimes it's about quick thinking, improvisation, and protecting the vulnerable, human or animal." Dr. Shepard approached, her expression thoughtful. "We're also improving our outreach, schools, community programs, teaching kids about conservation, responsible wildlife management. Your perspective as officers could help demonstrate the importance of vigilance and protection." Mike considered her suggestion. "I think I'd like that. Sharing this story and what we've learned could inspire others to respect and protect wildlife." As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Nala's cubs curled up beside her, her powerful body a shield around their tiny forms. Mike and Jason paused, taking in the serenity. It was hard to reconcile this calm with the chaos they had faced. The sanctuary was alive, vibrant, and safe once more. Yet the shadow of human greed and criminal intent lingered. Mike touched the carved lion figurine Dr. Shepard had given him during their first follow-up. It was small, polished, yet captured the essence of strength and resilience, a tangible reminder of bravery and the thin line between life and death. The incident had tested every instinct, every skill, and every ounce of courage. And while Brutus had acted on instinct, it was human malice that had orchestrated the crisis. Jason glanced at Mike, a wry grin crossing his face. "Think anyone at the bar will believe we wrestled a python to save a lion?" Mike chuckled, exhaustion mixing with pride. "Let's just say this one stays between us and the FBI." Yet deep down, both men knew that the sanctuary, Nala, her cubs, and even Brutus had changed them. Danger had a way of clarifying what truly mattered: courage, quick thinking, and the willingness to act when others might hesitate. In those quiet moments, watching the lioness and her cubs play, Mike reflected on the broader implications. The python escape had revealed vulnerabilities, not just in security, but in human nature, greed, and the lengths some would go to exploit the innocent. But it had also revealed courage, resilience, and the capacity for quick, decisive action to protect life. The sanctuary's operations had shifted subtly in the days since, cameras repositioned, locks reinforced, staff trained for emergencies. Every detail mattered now, every precaution a safeguard against those who sought to harm. Mike realized the battle was not over. The criminal aspect of the escape had only begun to unfold, and the story of Brutus and Nala was about to intersect with a larger investigation into wildlife trafficking across the Southwest. Yet for now, as the officers stood beside Dr. Shepard, watching the lioness groom her cubs with methodical care, a sense of accomplishment and relief settled over them. Lives had been saved, lessons had been learned, courage had been tested and proven. The rescue was over, but the investigation had only just begun. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sanctuary, Mike understood one truth clearly. Heroism was not just about facing immediate danger. It was about vigilance, responsibility, and the refusal to stand by when others were in peril. 6 weeks had passed since the terrifying events at Shepard Wildlife Rescue. The sanctuary, once a place of serene beauty and occasional excitement, now carried a subtle air of triumph and vigilance. Mike Brennan and Jason Coleman returned, not for another emergency, but to witness the aftermath and the resilience of the creatures they had risked their lives to save. Jason's leg had healed remarkably well, the stitches barely visible beneath the uniform pants he now wore. Yet the memory of Brutus's crushing coils and the rush of adrenaline during the confrontation remained fresh in his mind. "I still can't get over it," he admitted as they walked through the sanctuary's entrance. "I mean, one moment you're responding to a loose snake, the next you're basically in a battle for a lioness life." Mike nodded. "And now it's part of the history of this place. Every time I see Nala and her cubs, I'm reminded why quick action matters. Dr. Karen Shepard met them in the administrative building, her demeanor calmer than during the initial crisis, though a faint edge of tension lingered. She greeted Jason first, noting the progress of his recovery. Glad to see you're fully on your feet. No active duty for another week, though. Just come along for support while Mike handles follow-up with the new security measures. Jason smirked. Just here to tag along. Doctor's orders. Dr. Shepard led the officers through the sanctuary, explaining the security upgrades implemented after the Python incident. Cameras were strategically repositioned to cover every enclosure perimeter. Reinforced locks had been installed on sensitive habitats, and additional barriers had been placed to ensure staff safety during animal handling. We also upgraded emergency protocols, she explained. Every incident is now documented in real time, and a rapid response team is on call at all hours. Mike examined the improvements carefully, noting the efficiency and foresight. This is impressive. It'll make a real difference if anything like the Brutus incident happens again. But I assume there's more. Dr. Shepard nodded. The FBI's Wildlife Trafficking Task Force has taken an interest in our case. Victor Xiao and 5 associates have been arrested across 3 states. Evidence links them to smuggling operations involving rare reptiles, big cats, and endangered species. Your response that day prevented a much larger catastrophe. Jason's eyes widened. So what we stopped wasn't just Brutus escaping. It was part of a bigger plan? Mike folded his arms. Exactly. They intended to create a diversion, using Brutus to distract staff while accessing other enclosures. Your quick response disrupted the timeline entirely. Without it, they could have stolen multiple high-value specimens. Dr. Shepard guided them to the African predator section, where Nala and her cubs now thrived under enhanced security measures. The Lioness lounged on a raised platform, her amber eyes alert but calm, observing her cubs as they tumbled over one another, exploring, playing, and asserting the confidence that only safety can provide. Mike watched closely, noting the subtle growth of the cubs since the incident. They were no longer terrified, their movements confident yet cautious under their mother's supervision. Jason couldn't help but smile. It's incredible. They went from huddling in fear to exploring without a second thought. Nala's done a remarkable job. Dr. Shepard's eyes softened. She's resilient, and she trusts that the environment is safe now. But your actions gave her that chance. Without you, the cubs might not have survived. The officers were invited to a small ceremony organized by the sanctuary's board of directors. Framed photographs of Nala and her growing cubs were presented, accompanied by a plaque reading, "Guardians come in many forms, with gratitude from the Shepard Wildlife Rescue." Dr. Shepard handed Mike and Jason small carved figurines, a lion and a snake, crafted by a local artist. A symbol of courage, quick thinking, and respect for life, she explained. Mike turned the lion figure over in his hand, the smooth, polished wood reflecting the sanctuary lights. "This is nice, but we were just doing our job," he said, though he carefully pocketed the figurine. Dr. Shepard shook her head firmly. Most people would have waited for professionals. You acted immediately, saving 3 lives. That's far more than just doing your job. Later, Mike and Jason mingled with staff and local guests, reflecting on the scope of the operation. The sanctuary had become a hub of conservation awareness, its story now linked with federal efforts to curb wildlife trafficking. Educators and children attended the event, eager to learn about the animals, their habitats, and the dangers posed by illegal trade. Mike found himself drawn to a display explaining the rapid response protocol developed in partnership with the police department. It was innovative, first of its kind, and already garnering attention from other wildlife organizations. The FBI's agent, who had coordinated with the sanctuary, approached. "Your first-hand account strengthened our case immensely," she said to Mike and Jason. Victor Xiao's network spanned multiple states, and his associates were caught attempting further thefts just days later. Your response disrupted the timeline, giving us the leverage we needed for arrests. Jason raised an eyebrow. "So the Python incident was really a test run?" "Precisely," the agent confirmed. "It was calculated to measure response times and security weaknesses. You two inadvertently became part of an undercover operation by stopping it in its tracks." Mike nodded slowly, absorbing the significance. We thought we were just saving a lioness and her cubs. Turns out, we helped dismantle a criminal operation. Dr. Shepard guided them back to the lion enclosure. Nala's cubs now rested against her, small forms rising and falling with rhythmic breathing. You see, she said softly, this is why we do what we do. Protection isn't just for humans. It extends to all life here. And your actions reinforce that principle. Jason watched the lioness for a long moment. It's strange. When we first arrived, I never imagined I'd be part of something like this. Now seeing them calm and safe, I can't help but feel proud, I guess, and relieved. Mike smiled faintly. Every day offers chances to protect the vulnerable. Today it was Nala and her cubs. Tomorrow, who knows? But the lesson is clear. Vigilance, courage, and action matter. The ceremony concluded with applause and recognition for Mike and Jason, both from the sanctuary and the local police department. Awards, citations, and public commendations highlighted their extraordinary bravery. The officers accepted them humbly, knowing the real reward was the survival of Nala, her cubs, and the other animals they had protected. As the event wound down, Mike lingered near the viewing glass. Nala approached, her amber eyes locking with his. It was an unsettling, intelligent gaze, almost acknowledging him, not as a threat, but as a fellow guardian. He reached into his pocket, feeling the carved lion figurine, a reminder of that extraordinary day. Nala regarded him steadily, then turned back to her cubs. The silent communication hung between them. Respect, recognition, and mutual understanding. Mr. Shepard joined him, noting his thoughtful silence. You've had a unique role here. If you're interested, we're expanding our outreach programs to include law enforcement perspectives, teaching children about conservation and protection. Mike considered it, watching the cubs play without fear for the first time since the incident. I think I'd like that, he said finally. There's something profoundly satisfying about making a tangible difference. The sanctuary had not only recovered physically, but it had evolved. Protocols were stronger, animals were safer, and the bond between humans and wildlife had deepened. The python had acted on instinct. Nala had protected her cubs instinctively. But the human elements, courage, quick thinking, and ethical action, had made the difference between life and death. As the sun set, casting long golden shadows over the sanctuary, Mike and Jason walked back toward the administrative building, their minds reflecting on the week's events. The rescue, the investigation, and the community response had all reinforced a truth they already understood. Heroism came in many forms, often where least expected, and every action mattered. For the sanctuary, for Nala and her cubs, and for the larger fight against wildlife crime, the consequences of courage had been profound and lasting. Mike glanced back once more at the lioness, who watched over her cubs with serene vigilance, and understood that some bonds, forged in moments of crisis, were unbreakable. The morning sun bathed Shepherd Wildlife Rescue in a golden light, highlighting the tranquility that now enveloped the sanctuary. Mike Brennan stood quietly near the lion enclosure, observing Nala and her cubs as they tumbled playfully across the grass. The cubs, once trembling in terror under the shadow of Brutus, now moved with curiosity, testing their strength and agility under the watchful eyes of their mother. Every leap, every playful pounce was a testament to survival and resilience, a story that had unfolded because of the courage and split-second decisions of those who had arrived in time. Mike's hand instinctively went to the small carved lion figurine in his pocket, the smooth wood cool under his fingers. It served as a tangible reminder of the extraordinary day when ordinary officers faced an extraordinary challenge. Nala's amber eyes met his once again, intelligent and observant, almost as if she recognized the man who had intervened when her family was in mortal danger. He allowed himself a quiet smile, acknowledging a bond forged not through words, but through shared survival. Jason Coleman limped up beside him, his repaired leg moving steadily, the scars of the encounter hidden beneath his uniform. You think she remembers us? He asked, nodding toward Nala. Mike shrugged slightly. Maybe, or maybe she just recognizes a protector. Either way, it doesn't matter. She's safe, the cubs are thriving, and we made a difference. The events of that day had reverberated far beyond the immediate rescue. Victor Shao and his associates had been apprehended, thanks in part to the documentation and rapid response provided by Mike, Jason, and the sanctuary staff. The FBI's Wildlife Trafficking Task Force continued to investigate, piecing together the scope of illegal operations that spanned multiple states and even international borders. Mike realized that what had seemed like a simple rescue had instead disrupted a sophisticated network of criminals who sought to exploit vulnerable animals for profit. As the officers walked through the sanctuary, they observed the subtle yet significant changes implemented after the python incident. Cameras covered blind spots, reinforced gates barred access to sensitive habitats, and staff training had been intensified to handle emergencies involving aggressive or escaped animals. These measures reflected not only a commitment to animal safety, but also a newfound understanding of human threats to conservation. Each improvement, each precaution, was a step toward preventing the chaos they had witnessed from happening again. Dr. Shepard approached them, her presence calm yet commanding. She gestured toward the lion enclosure, where Nala's cubs had now settled against their mother, nursing and dozing in the warmth of the sun. "They've come a long way in 6 weeks," she said. "The sanctuary as a whole has learned a great deal from the incident, and so have you, I believe." Mike looked up, considering her words. "I've learned that courage isn't just about confronting danger. It's about seeing what's vulnerable and stepping in when others might hesitate. Today it wasn't just the python or the lioness. It was about understanding our responsibility to those who cannot protect themselves." Jason added, "And that quick thinking, teamwork, and improvisation can make the difference between life and death. We didn't have the perfect tools, but we made do. Every decision counted." Dr. Shepard nodded approvingly. "That's precisely the lesson we want to impart to the sanctuary's outreach programs. We're now partnering with local schools to teach children about wildlife conservation, the importance of ethical treatment, and the reality of human threats to animal safety. Your perspective as officers, showing how human action can protect or endanger, will be invaluable." Mike considered the offer, observing Nala gently nudge one of her cubs back into a safe spot beneath a rock. The sight evoked a deep sense of fulfillment. "I think I'd like that," he said finally. "Teaching kids about protection, vigilance, and compassion. It's meaningful in a way that patrols and arrests alone can't provide." The sanctuary, already a hub for conservation awareness, had now become a living classroom. Visitors could witness firsthand the resilience of the animals, the dedication of the staff, and the tangible impact of decisive action. Nala and her cubs symbolized both the fragility and strength of life, how instinct and human intervention could intersect to preserve what mattered most. The officers continued their rounds, eventually joining a small ceremony organized to honor those who had contributed to the successful resolution of the incident. Chief Wallace, recognizing the extraordinary courage demonstrated, presented Mike and Jason with departmental citations. "Officers Brennan and Coleman exemplify the finest traditions of law enforcement," he announced. "They extended protection to all members of our community, including those with 4 legs, scales, or fur." Dr. Shepard followed with her own presentation, offering framed photographs of Nala and her cubs, accompanied by the engraved message, "Guardians come in many forms. With gratitude from Shepard Wildlife Rescue." Mike accepted the photo, his expression a mix of humility and pride. During the reception, Mike reflected on the extraordinary chain of events. A routine patrol call had escalated into a life-or-death struggle involving a massive python, a fiercely protective lioness, and innocent cubs. It had challenged every skill, instinct, and ethical consideration he had ever known. And yet, it had also provided lessons that extended far beyond law enforcement: the value of empathy, the importance of decisive action, and the profound satisfaction of protecting those who could not defend themselves. Jason, watching the cubs through reinforced glass, spoke softly. "You know, when the call first came in, I thought it would be something mundane, a raccoon in a garage, a deer on the road. Never imagined we'd end up wrestling a python to save a lion." Mike chuckled quietly. "Definitely not in the job description. But I wouldn't trade the lesson it taught us, or the lives we saved." As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the sanctuary grounds, Mike lingered near Nala. The lioness rose and approached the viewing glass, amber eyes locking with his. There was a measured intelligence in her gaze, a recognition of the bond formed through shared experience. She patted back to her cubs, her message delivered without words. Mike smiled faintly, touching the carved lion figurine in his pocket. The wooden sculpture had once seemed a small token, but now it symbolized an extraordinary day, a day when courage, quick thinking, and empathy had converged to protect life. Sometimes the most unexpected calls led to the most meaningful connections, and sometimes bravery meant not just facing danger, but expanding the definition of responsibility and protection. In that moment, Mike realized that the lessons of shepherd wildlife rescue extended far beyond the sanctuary gates. Heroism was not always about confrontation. It was about recognizing vulnerability, taking calculated risks, and ensuring the survival of those who could not speak for themselves. Every patrol, every emergency, every choice mattered, whether it involved human citizens or the animals entrusted to their care. The sanctuary was alive with the sounds of wildlife, children's laughter, and the quiet hum of visitors absorbing lessons about conservation and responsibility. Nala's cubs rolled in the grass, their mother a steadfast guardian. The memory of Brutus, the python, loomed only as a reminder of the precarious balance between instinct and human intervention. Mike and Jason left the enclosure, passing through the sanctuary's paths one last time that evening. The golden light highlighted the improvements made, the animals thriving, and the community's growing awareness. Their actions had not only preserved life, but had helped establish protocols, security, and awareness that would prevent similar incidents in the future. As they exited the sanctuary, Jason glanced at Mike. "Think Nala remembers us?" Mike laughed softly. "Maybe, or maybe she just respects a fellow protector. Either way, she's safe. The cubs are thriving. That's all that matters." They walked to the car, the air warm and scented with the earthy aroma of the sanctuary. Mike held the lion figurine in his hand, a reminder that heroism came in many forms. It was in split-second decisions, in empathy, and in the refusal to stand idle when lives hung in the balance. And while the headlines would fade, the lessons endured. The courage of a mother lion, the quick thinking of officers, and the enduring bond between human and animal guardianship. In a world filled with dangers, both natural and human-made, the story of shepherd wildlife rescue would remain a testament to what was possible when vigilance, bravery, and compassion intersected. And as Mike glanced back one final time at the lioness and her cubs, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a quiet understanding that the work of protection in all its forms was never done, but was always worth it.